Raised in economic hardship in an impoverished neighborhood of Mumbai, India, Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar yearned for a better life. He sought to gift his sisters jewels and outfit his brothers in tailored, well-cut clothing. As a teenager, he saw a way to do that, to echo the steps of the city's Mafia dons who'd come before him. They had power, influence, and so much wealth that they couldn't possibly spend it all in 10 lifetimes, never mind one. But to achieve such immensity, Kaskar would have to take down the old dons, and in doing so, he shaped Mumbai's organized crime landscape for the modern ages. No longer did the city's mafia groups operate quietly in the shadows. Kaskar's reign introduced blood and violence and thrust illegal activities into broad daylight. He and his operations are considered fearless, calculated, and forceful, making way for a new kind of Indian criminal underworld. Join us for this documentary as we examine the life and crimes of India's underworld. Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar was born on December 26, 1955, in Dongri, an impoverished Muslim neighborhood of Mumbai, India, an otherwise Hindu-dominated city. He was the second of 8 children born to Amina, a stay-at-home mother, and Ibrahim Kaskar, a constable with the Mumbai police. Despite his decent job, Ibrahim earned little money. As a result, the family lived in poverty throughout Kaskar's childhood. Throughout the majority of their days, the family didn't eat, but Ibrahim was determined to give his children a good education, and he was eventually able to enroll all of them in school. Kaskar would go on to attend Ahmed Sailor High School, a prominent establishment that used English as its primary language of instruction. He was also placed into several extracurricular activities, including the Road Safety Patrol Group, where he was given traffic training. Though Ibrahim wished the best for his children, he was known as a rigorous disciplinarian who regularly used corporal punishment to keep his sons in line. As a police officer, Ibrahim Kaskar produced some level of fear in local criminals. Despite the small size of the neighborhood, Dongri was filled with crooks who pushed stolen goods off onto their fences and ruled with an iron fist. Ibrahim and 2 of his colleagues made a name for themselves in the 1960s, when they became known for their out-of-the-box methods of interrogation that included both psychological and physical torture. Their methods were so effective that criminals used to say, "Even the walls will confess their crimes." By all accounts, Ibrahim was a well-respected member of the community. At the time, 2 men, Haji Mastan and Karim Lala, were running the criminal underbelly of Dongri, but even they made time for Ibrahim, proving just how admired he was. He was often brought in to help mediate disputes and was known to extend a helping hand to the most poverty-stricken families, handing out food, clothing, and even cash. If he didn't have the resources himself, he would borrow from the likes of Mastan and Lala, paying them back at a later date. But everything changed in the mid-1960s when Ibrahim and several of his colleagues lost their jobs. The reason why is unclear, but it has been theorized that they were let go after bungling a high-profile murder case in 1966. Without any income at all, the family were not only on the brink of starvation, but the children were forced to leave their schools. Kaskar became a school dropout at just 10 years old. For a young boy, dropping out of school was a dream come true. Kaskar said goodbye to his demanding workload, rigorous testing, and his boring extracurriculars. He was now free to do as he pleased, and he was often found spending time with other children his age, playing cricket in the neighborhood. His father, meanwhile, pursued odd jobs and errand running as a way of attempting to make ends meet. Though he was offered work with some of the city's most seedy characters, he turned it down time and time again, choosing to remain honest. Because he was so busy, however, Ibrahim failed to keep an eye on his 2 oldest children. Ibrahim's unemployment subsequently forced the family to give up their home and move to another nearby neighborhood. It was here that Kaskar and his brother would begin to develop their criminal gang. Despite the fact that both boys had been raised in an acutely religious household, with parents who emphasized the importance of an education, both Kaskar and his brother Shabir were drawn to power and money. Before he became a teenager, Kaskar had started learning how to steal and get away with it, how to pick pockets without anyone noticing, and the best ways to extort money from local shopkeepers and other business people. His first official crime, one in which he was caught, occurred when he was just 14. He reportedly snatched cash right out of a man's hand who was standing on the street counting it and fled the scene. The man appeared to know of Kaskar, however, and promptly reported the theft to his father. Ibrahim was, by all accounts, enraged by his son's behavior and proceeded to beat him. Kaskar and his budding crime gang lay low for a few days following this incident, but it wasn't long before they continued as if nothing had happened. Kaskar soon became known as a neighborhood menace. Whenever Ibrahim learned of his crimes, he became both angered and embarrassed. As both a former policeman and a father, he had hoped that his sons would become fine examples of good leaders. Instead, they were becoming the scourge of the neighborhood that he had once fought against. Ibrahim would haul Kaskar up time and time again when he caught wind of his misdeeds, eventually losing count of the number of times he beat his own son to try and curb his bad behavior. Though Kaskar admired his father, he was reportedly closer to his mother, who was sometimes considered the only person he would listen to. While he and Ibrahim had a difficult relationship wherein they would often go through periods of not talking to one another, his mother was a constant support system. Amina would never pull him up on his behavior like his father did, but would gently attempt to reason with him. She once told him, "This is not right for you. Look, your dad is a policeman, and your activities will ruin his reputation." Despite her attempts to carefully steer him in the right direction, however, not even Amina could get through to Kaskar. He maintained his life of petty crimes and mischief, unwilling to listen to anyone when it came to this topic. Shabir, despite being the eldest, was known to play second fiddle to Kaskar, who would make financial decisions for the household when their father wasn't present. The other children fell into line behind the future Don, going along with whatever he said. By the early 1970s, Kaskar was the leader of a small gang of neighborhood boys. Up until 1973, extortion was their biggest crime, but in the following years, they began to participate in fraud. They often lured men into their shop under the guise of making them a good deal on their imported watches, and after a deal was agreed upon, the watch would be taken away by one of the boys to be wrapped and packaged. Instead of the watch, however, a stone was placed in the box. It was then wrapped and given back to the customer, who was warned not to open it until he was at home, as there were thieves in the area who might give him trouble. The customer would never know they were conned until they were back home. If the customer returned to complain, the boys simply denied everything. If the police were told, they'd abandon the shop for a few days and sometimes leave town for weeks or even months. Somehow, their scheme always worked. In the mid-1970s, the lives of Kaskar, his family, and his gang changed again when he had a falling out with a local prominent figure named Bashu Dada. Wealthy and violent, Bashu was another Duan who had enough power to influence the local elections. He was also friends with Ibrahim, which meant that Kaskar had a level of respect for Bashu, even when he employed thugs who attacked members of Kaskar's group. By this time, the group was known simply as Dawood and Shabir, though its name would later be changed to D Company. This incident frustrated Dawood, who wanted to put the thugs that attacked his men in their place, but did not want to upset Bashu and sow discord between him and his father. However, one day while he was out on his motorcycle, Kaskar was approached by one of his gang members and friends. The young man told him that he'd been assaulted once again by Bashu's men, and Kaskar decided to finally confront one of the men, named Hamid, who was constantly hassling D Company members. Kaskar threatened him, noting that his connection to Bashu was his saving grace. Hamid subsequently told Bashu that Kaskar had insulted him, causing Bashu to summon Ibrahim and Shabir. A rather one-sided argument then broke out, with Bashu expressing his rage about what Kaskar had said. Shabir and Ibrahim were apologetic. Back at home, Shabir reportedly sobbed over the insults that Bashu, consumed with rage, had hurled at his father, most notably pointing out the family's lack of wealth. Ibrahim reportedly remained straight-faced, stoic, but stunned. It was Kaskar who then became angered when he learned of what Bashu had said to the two men and vowed revenge. Bashu and Ibrahim's friendship dated back decades. It was thanks to Ibrahim that Bashu's smuggled goods were released from police custody, that any time his men were stuck in the system, they would find themselves out of it after a short time. Ibrahim dealt in all sorts of favors in order to keep Bashu and his illicit activities running and out of prison. As a result, Bashu had been able to make millions, buy himself a Mercedes, and order custom-made shoes. In return for Ibrahim's efforts, he occasionally threw the family a little bit of cash, but it was never a life-changing amount. Kaskar spent days mulling over the situation with Bashu. Not only had he insulted his family, but he had thrown back all of his father's hard work in his face. Though friends and fellow D Company members tried to calm him down, Kaskar was hell-bent on doing something to avenge his humiliated family. He soon learned of Bashu's movements and decided to surprise him. He and his gang members waited on a street for Bashu after he finished his prayers and began throwing dozens of empty glass bottles at the older man. The attack was considered the first of its kind at the time. An altercation between Bashu and his men and Kaskar and D Company soon broke out, and Bashu was seriously injured. One of his men was able to get to the car and swing it around to him, giving him an escape route. Bashu and his right-hand men fled the scene, but other gang members remained, and the violence and chaos continued. D Company was able to smash the car's rear window and taillights and dent the body as it drove away. Kaskar wasn't finished yet, however. He subsequently went to Bashu's gym and shattered its mirrored walls using a hockey stick, smashed up its equipment, and vandalized its furniture. For Kaskar, it was the ultimate act of revenge. For Bashu, it was the ultimate humiliation. A short time later, he retired from public life. His men left him, seeking greener pastures elsewhere. In the following weeks, Bashu was apprehended by the Bombay police under the National Security Act and detained for a year. His right-hand man, Khalid, soon joined D Company, as did some of Bashu's other gang members. While his reign was over, though, Kaskar's was just beginning. In the following years, D Company became involved in all sorts of illegal activities. Gold smuggling, extortion, bank robberies, murder, and drug trafficking were just a few of their most common practices, and they also used real estate as a front for their illicit pursuits. The group was led by both Kaskar and his brother Shabir, until the latter's untimely death in the early 1980s, which forced Kaskar alone to lead the criminal organization. On the night of February 12, 1981, Shabir left his heavily pregnant wife to visit his mistress, a sex worker by the name of Chitra. After picking her up, he was forced to stop for fuel as his vehicle had become low on gas. It was during his journey to the petrol station that he noticed the flower-covered car behind him, dressed like it belonged to a newly married couple. But it wasn't a happy man and wife in the front seats. Instead, the vehicle contained several individuals, including Manya Serva, a prominent Mumbai-based gangster, best known for his meticulous planning methods and his daredevilry. The white car, decked out in colorful flowers, pulled to a stop behind him at the petrol station. Shabir reached for his gun. 5 men leapt out of the vehicle and surrounded Shabir, Chitra, and their car. Then they opened fire, shattering the windshield and ripping through Shabir's body while Chitra screamed in fear. The final blow came when Sher's wrists were slit, causing blood to spill free. 9 bullets would later be extracted from Shabir's body, while a further 19 punctures were discovered inside the car. His murder was considered one of the most violent and brutal organized crime killings that Mumbai had ever witnessed. It is also credited with reshaping the city's Mafia landscape. Blood, gore, revenge, broad daylight murders, and ownership of swathes of money, guns, and drugs all became the new norm. While once upon a time, organized crime had operated quietly in the area, now it was loud, chaotic, violent, and very apparent for all to see. Just after Shabir's murder, his killers went to the property where his brother lived with some gang members and began to shoot blindly at the gates outside. The noise woke many of the home's inhabitants, including Kaskar and his right-hand man, Khalid. They all grabbed guns and began to shoot back, much to the surprise of Shabir's murderers, who hadn't expected retaliation at this time of night. Hours would pass before Kaskar would learn of his brother's death. Kaskar thought of nothing but revenge following Shabir's demise. He eventually decided to outsource his scheme, hiring a hitman through some of his contacts, making it impossible for it to be traced back to him. After all, if the men who killed his brother started disappearing or turning up dead, he would be the #1 suspect in the case. Notably, his plan was successful, and many of the men involved in the shooting of Shabir soon vanished. Manya Survey decided to lay low after learning that his accomplices were being picked off one by one, but he was ultimately killed by Mumbai police officers in January of 1982 as part of a police initiative to crack down on gang violence. In the early 1980s, Samad Khan was considered a dangerous, volatile, and violent man. He was so much so that most other criminals refused to associate with him, as he often brought ruckus and police attention to himself when tasked with the most menial of objectives. In one instance, he spent 5 hours torturing an elderly man to death in a hotel room, under the impression that this man was the one he'd been told to kill. But it was a case of mistaken identity. Khan was not remorseful because he'd killed an innocent person, but because he'd failed to complete his task. Days later, he found the correct target and made short work of his death. For years, he'd circulated within Mumbai's organized crime groups, but in 1984, he decided to set out on his own after his uncle, another prominent figure in the community, cut ties with him due to his regular run-ins with law enforcement. After striking out alone, Khan made acquaintances with Kaskar, who was impressed by his bold bravado. But just days later, Khan would make trouble for himself once more when he attacked and brutally beat Kaskar's younger brother, Noura, after learning that the young man had been spreading malicious rumors about him. Noura had reportedly been saying that had he not had such an influential and well-respected uncle, he would have been done away with a long time ago. This bruised Khan's ego, as did the recent fact that his uncle had disowned him, so he went out of his way to track down Noura and confront him. In the days after the beating, Kaskar did not retaliate, and Khan believed this was because of their new and blossoming friendship. But it was because Kaskar was simply biding his time. On October 4th, 1984, Khan left his lover's apartment and headed downstairs in the elevator. When he stepped out again, he was met with Kaskar and several members of his gang. All 4 men were silent. Each had a gun in their hand. As soon as Khan opened his mouth to attempt to explain himself, he was met with gunfire. He was hit 19 times and died on the spot. His bodyguard was also injured, as was an innocent bystander, a housewife who'd been in the lift at the same time as Khan. After the shooting, Kaskar spat on Khan's face. He had been gravely disrespected when Khan had beaten up his brother. He had been willing to forgive Khan's other transgressions and his bad reputation, only for Khan to assault his family. He concluded that Khan's approach had been an attempt to disarm him, and that he planned to betray Kaskar as soon as he had the chance. However, Khan's murder caused great disruption amongst the local police, who decided that it was time to bring Kaskar in. He was wanted on multiple charges, but the killing of Samad Khan was the final straw, and the Mumbai police decided to pursue him with everything they had. In 1986, Kaskar left the city and then abandoned India altogether, opting to flee to Dubai in order to escape the law. Though he was no longer in India, Kaskar remained firmly in charge of D Company. He spent the late 1980s expanding the gang with the aid of his second-in-command, Chota Rajan. By the early 1990s, D Company consisted of over 5,000 members and brought in hundreds of millions of rupees in revenue every year. On the afternoon of March 12, 1993, the city of Mumbai was rocked by a series of bombings known as the Mumbai Bombings. The perpetrators of the crime placed bombs inside of cars and scooters, damaging various notable areas of the city, including the headquarters of the Hindu right-wing political party Shiv Sena, a terminal at what was then known as Sahar Airport, the Bombay Stock Exchange, the Air India building, and the city's passport office, to name just a few of the affected areas. The first bomb exploded at around 1:30 p.m. in the basement of the Bombay Stock Exchange building, severely damaging much of the 28th-floor building and its neighboring offices. At least 50 people died in the explosion. 30 minutes later, another car bomb was detonated, this time in front of the Manvi branch of Corporation Bank. Over the course of around 2 hours, a total of 12 bombs were detonated across the city. At least 3 suitcase bombs were left in hotels, including the Hotel Sea Rock, Hotel Juhu Centaur, and Hotel Airport Centaur. At another location, grenades were thrown, aimed at civilians, while a double-decker bus was detonated in what was considered the deadliest explosion of them all. 90 people died in this attack alone. 257 people were killed in the Bombay bombings, while 1,400 more were injured. According to reports, there was some confusion in the aftermath about how many explosions had taken place. Indian politician Sharad Pawar, who was then Chief Minister of Maharashtra, claimed on television that 13 explosions had taken place, but he would later confess that only 12 had occurred and that he'd purposely lied. He'd claimed that a 13th blast had taken place in Masjid Bundar, a Muslim-dominated area, and stated that he'd lied to prevent riots. He thought that by portraying both Hindu and Muslim communities as victims, he could prevent conflict in the city. In reality, the 12 areas hit were mostly home to Hindus. Pawar also later admitted that he'd misled the public by claiming the explosions may have been the work of the LTTE, a Sri Lankan militant organization, although the authorities had already received intelligence that D Company was behind the attack. Just 3 days before the attack took place, on March 9th, a small-time criminal named Gul Noor Mohammed Sheikh was detained at a police station in South Mumbai. Intelligence indicated that he was one of 19 men chosen by prominent D Company member Tiger Merman to be trained in the use of guns and the creation of bombs. Sheikh was sent to Pakistan via Dubai 1 month earlier to complete such training and had returned on March 4th. Having learned of his trip, the police detained his brothers to encourage him to surrender. He did so and subsequently explained that he had been training in Pakistan in order to participate in a bombing conspiracy, in which numerous bombs would be placed around the city, including at locations like the Bombay Stock Exchange, the airport, and the Shiv Sena HQ. Despite offering up this information, though, the police did not take Sheikh seriously. His arrest prompted D Company to accelerate their plan, bringing it forward from April to March 12th. In the months leading up to the bombings, riots had plagued the city of Mumbai. The chaos had been triggered by the demolition of the centuries-old Babri Mosque, an act carried out by Hindu extremists in the holy town of Ayodhya in December 1992. Such extremists had been campaigning to get rid of the mosque for decades. It had been at the center of many political disputes and was a focus of Hindu-Muslim discord for years. Hindu extremists wished to build a temple in its place to mark what they believed to be the birthplace of Lord Ram, the Hindu warrior king. Days earlier, a court had ordered that the mosque be protected from demolition, but despite this, a crowd of 200,000 rioters broke through the police cordons and used hammers to knock down 3 domes of the building before tearing at the bricks with their hands. Though hundreds of extra police officers were brought into the city so that a ceremony could be carried out around the mosque, eyewitnesses reported that these officers simply stood by and did not attempt to stop the attack. The series of bombings in 1993 caused a severe rift within D Company. Chota Rajan, Kaskar's right-hand man, split from the organization following the attack. Several other leadership-level Hindus within the group also left. As a result, Rajan's new mostly Hindu gang pitted itself against Kaskar's mostly Muslim D Company. The two groups subsequently warred for decades, killing over 100 criminal gang members in the process, while 7 of the men said to be involved in the bombings were assassinated by Rajan's hitmen. Rajan is believed to have helped intelligence agencies understand how D Company operates and its hierarchy. sharing his intimate knowledge of the group and its operations with them. He has continued to maintain a prominent organized crime group of his own, with his reputation being strengthened by the police's lack of charges against Kaskar and his gang, which has been both angering and disappointing to many, especially Hindus. Notably, this is similar to how Kaskar grew to power in the 1980s. He made himself the enemy of the Pathan gang, who were largely despised and were the subject of a police campaign at the time. Right-wing Hindu groups like the Shiv Sena threw their weight behind Rajan following the bombings, openly expressing relief and gratitude that he survived the ordeal. Hundreds of people were arrested and detained following the bombings. In 2006, around 100 out of 129 people were convicted, although many of those people have managed to elude capture, including Tiger Meeman himself, who is credited as being the mastermind of the assault, along with Kaskar. In September of that year, the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act Special Court convicted a further 4 members of the Meeman family on charges of conspiring and abetting acts of terror. 3 other Meeman family members were acquitted. One member of the family, Yaqub Memon, was executed by hanging on July 30, 2015. A counterterrorism expert named Douglas Farah noted that Kaskar's motives behind the bombings were likely self-serving. Ibrahim loves to hang out with the movie stars and live the good life. Not exactly a natural ally of radical Islamist groups, but he appears to provide the muscle and know-how to attacks, rather than being the intellectual author of the violence he has participated in. His ideology seems more firmly wedded to his financial well-being than to his religious beliefs. Around 10 years after the bombings, in the autumn of 2003, the United States designated Kaskar as a global terrorist, noting his links to Al-Qaeda and his financing of terrorist organizations. India Today noted that he provided the logistics for the 2008 Mumbai attacks, a series of coordinated Islamist terrorist attacks. The US also announced it would freeze any assets he had in the country and prohibited him from having financial transactions with American nationals. Kaskar's recent activities include terror funding, drug trafficking, gun running, extortion, and money laundering. He is also known to be heavily involved in real estate in the likes of Dubai, India, Malaysia, Thailand, and Pakistan, with D Company having now spread across large areas of Asia, Europe, and Africa. Over 40% of its earnings come from India alone. The purchasing of property in such countries has allowed D Company's illicit activities to flourish in Southeast Asia, where it is accused of bribing law enforcement and the judiciary in order to seamlessly carry out its practices. The group is also known to be involved in the financing of the Bollywood film industry, having funded numerous studios and individual films during the 80s and 90s. Around this same time, Kaskar himself was linked to all sorts of celebrities, including Pakistani actress and model Anita Ayub, and famed former actress Yasim Joseph Thakur, better known by her stage name of Mandakini. Thakur has admitted to meeting him in the early 1990s in Dubai, but has strongly denied having an affair with him. As well as funding Bollywood projects, D Company is also famed for having sent extortion, blackmail, and other threats to producers and celebrities within the industry, and has even been linked to several murders. The most notable of these is that of Gulshan Kumar, music producer, businessman, and the founder of T-Series, the Indian record label and film studio. On August 12, 1997, Gulshan was shot 16 times after leaving a Hindu temple in Mumbai, which he visited on a daily basis. Notably, he'd received 2 threatening phone calls in the days leading up to his death, on both August 5th and August 8th, but he refused to pay the extortion money. Gulshan actually survived the initial shooting but died after attempting to get help when nearby residents shut their doors and refused to give him aid. In 2001, a man named Abdul Rauf Merchant confessed to the murder and was sentenced to life in prison the following year, but the police still allege that the murder was a result of Gulshan refusing to pay the protection money to D Company. In 2017, his brother Iqbal Kaskar was extradited to India from the UAE after it was alleged that the crime gang used its Hawala networks to fund televangelist Zakir Naik's NGO Islamic Research Foundation. Naik is based in Malaysia and is known for his hate speech, sexism, and homophobia, which has led him to be banned in many countries, including the UK, Canada, and Australia. Since fleeing to Dubai in 1986, Kaskar has never returned to India. He was believed to be living in Pakistan for some time before returning to the United Arab Emirates. Indian sources subsequently reported that he then moved to the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. In 2015, there were mixed reports about his whereabouts. One MP told the Lok Sabha, the lower house of India's parliament, that his whereabouts were unknown. But 6 days later, another politician explained that he was in Pakistan, and it was planned that he would be brought back to India to face charges for both the murder of Samad Khan and the part he played in the Bombay Bombings. Indian news outlet The Times Now reported in August that year that he was in Karachi, Pakistan, where he is known to have 9 separate properties and 3 passports, which he uses regularly to travel. This information came after the outlet spoke with a woman who initially claimed to be his wife before changing her story and stating that she did not know anyone by the name of Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar. Despite this information, Kaskar has never been apprehended and has never answered for his crimes. He is still labeled a global terrorist, and various intelligence agencies have attempted to find him over the years, but to no avail. His location has been traced numerous times to Karachi, Pakistan, but Pakistani authorities have denied knowing of his whereabouts. His former right-hand man, Chota Rajan, told the media that he does travel outside of Pakistan once in a while, but Karachi is his base. Counter-terrorism expert Douglas Farah stated in 2008 that Kaskar's lavish lifestyle makes it difficult to believe he is not protected by the Pakistani intelligence services, especially given their regular denials that he is in the country or has knowledge of his whereabouts, despite the fact that he has been traced to the city of Karachi on several occasions. Farah has also suggested the possibility that Kaskar is protected by Dubai officials, as he spent much time in the UAE over the years.